And here we go. So, welcome, and we'll start with the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And
Amen.
we just said a mouthful there. I have to tell you, when you start to think about what are the implications of that bracha that we said, and the very fact that we make a bracha before we start studying. Well, today, I'm going to try and come through on a commitment I made to actually look up the references that the Torah Temimah made. And I did, there were two references, and fortunately, the application allows you to copy material, the PDFs, so that's what I did basically. So I'm going to go to the share, and I may have to, let's see where we are now. Why did I see one? Okay, I'm going to stop this a second. All right, give me a moment, please. There we are. All right, let's see. Okay. So we had been talking about, the fact that building the Mikdash does not override the Shabbat, that building the sanctuary doesn't, and a whole bunch of reasons why we might have thought that was the case, etc., etc. And I'm trying to find a place where we were looking at that. Oh, we were talking about the Lo Tava'aru Eish, the specific commandment that's given in this passage, that you shall not kindle a fire. But let me keep looking. There was there was a reference made to Totafot Beinei Necha, right? In that Parshat Bo, and I'm gonna try and go to there. So give me a moment to find the place. All right. And it was on the passage. So now I'm going to go ahead and share. And there it is. So this is back in Parshat Bo, back there, and it says vaYak'hel la'ot. There are a whole bunch of things where it says, this is the end of Parshat Bo, where in two places it talks about the Tefillin, the mitzvah of Tefillin, and it says it shall be for a sign. vaYak'hel la'ot al yadcha, it shall be a sign upon your hand, u'lezikaron or zicharon beinenecha, and a remembrance between your eyes. And that's what we're going to be looking at. So let's go with the original passage. He's looking at tractate Menachot. Menachot is a meal offering. There's a tractate on that, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in that particular tractate that doesn't necessarily have to do directly with meal offerings. So it shall be for you as a sign. Tanya. So we have, as I said, Tanya means that we're talking about a baraita, right? A passage that's contemporaneous with the Mishnah, but not in the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Akiva, great. And by the way, the teachers mentioned in these at this particular time are known as Tanaim. So Rabbi Akiva is, of course, a famous Tana. Yachol yaniach adam tefillin b'Shabbatot. And this is the connection. One might think that a person should put on tefillin on Shabbos, v'yamim tovim, and Yontef. Talmud Lomar, and for this reason it says, vaYak'hel la'ot. So this is the business of the lacha. Mi shetzrichin ot. Those that require an ot. In other words, the days in this case, I believe, he's talking about that require a sign. Yatzu Shabbatot v'yamim tovim. So Shabbos and Yontef is an exception. They don't shehein gufan ot, because they themselves are an ot. And this is a relatively famous drush, by the way, as to why we don't put on tefillin on Shabbos or Yontef. And this is, of course, I think this is opening a door for your awareness as well, just how seriously we take these mitzvot, that they aren't suggestions. They are really and truly, divine commandments And the fact that they're being treated like this and looked at this like the way we're doing is indicative of how they are, how we feel about them. That they're serious things, and so have to be considered very, very seriously. Let's get into Torah T'mimah now. Let's find out where he starts here. So I see Lamed Bet, but I need to find Lamed Gimel, and there it is, right over here. Do you want me to make the print a little bit bigger? Might be helpful. See if I can. All right. So P Resh Rashi. You realize that every time you see these double slashes, it has to do with some kind of abbreviation, or it might mean a quotation mark too, by the way. So Rashi explains Dichtiv b'Shabbat, that it's stated on regarding Shabbat in Parshat Tisa, the parsha we read last week. Ki oti. Remember, we read about the Shabbat there, and it says ki oti, that it is an ot. Ad kan l'shono. That's the end of the quote. For al Yom Tov, however, regarding Yontef, lo piresh ma'uma, he doesn't explain anything. That seems to raise an issue. V'nir'eh, and it appears, mishum, the reason why he doesn't is the gam Yom Tov nikra Shabbat. That a Yontef is also referred to as a Shabbat. It may not be Shabbat Bereshit, right, the seventh day of the week, but it is also, the term Shabbat can be applied to a Yom Tov. And he's going to, this requires, some splaining, right? Ukidichtiv, Parshat Emor, and as it states in the Parsha of Emor, that's in Leviticus, Usfartem Lachem, this is this famous dispute between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and I believe the Karaites follow the Sadducees on this. It says, quote, Usfartem lachem mimochorat haShabbat, and you shall count to you after the Sabbath. This is the past. This is talking about Pesach and the counting of the Omer. All right. And so the question is, when it says after the Shabbat, what does it mean? Does it mean Shabbat Chol HaMoed Pesach? Does it mean the Shabbos that occurs during Pesach? Or does it mean the day after the first day of Pesach, which is a Yom Tov, and doesn't necessarily fall on Shabbat? And the Pharisees, the rabbinic tradition is that that's what we mean. We mean from the second day of Pesach. And that's in fact what we follow. And the Sadducees said, no, it refers to the Shabbat of Chol HaMoed Pesach. So, V'hainu, and what we understand by this is Mimochorat Yom Tov. We mean the day after Yom Tov. The first day of Pesach, we know, is a Yom Tov. Ukemevu'ar b'menachot, and as is explained in the tractate Menachot, Samachay, this is the page, so this is 65b. Uvis Sukkot, this is how they, and in Sukkot, the tractate Sukkot, I guess where he's referring, Ketiv, it states, Yom Harishon Shabbaton, right? Sorry, regarding, this is in Parshat Emor, that's what he's referring to. And regarding Sukkot, it says, Yom Harishon Shabbaton, the first day should be a Shabbaton, the word Shabbat, right? Uva Yom Hashmini Shabbaton, and regarding the 8th day from the first day of Sukkot, right? Shmini Atzeret, it should be also Shabbaton, a day of ceasing labor. Let me see. V'chein meforash, I believe is what that stands for. I have to figure out what this abbreviation stands for, but I think it means, and so it is explained, the Shvuot Tetzayin, in the tractate Shvuot, right? There's no tractate Shavuot. It's the tractate called Oaths. Tet Vav Bet. We made a reference to this before. This is 15b. The Yalfu, that they learned out She'ein binyan Beit HaMikdash, that the construction of the temple Doche Yom Tov does not override Yom Tov. Midichtiv, because it says Et Shabtotai Tishmoru, you shall observe, you shall guard my Sabbaths. And by that is included then Yom Tov. Well, and by the way, it says, Shabtotai tishmoru umikdashi tira'u, or tiru. Ooh, I'm sorry, I don't have the points here, and I didn't memorize the verse. It says, and my sanctity, or it could mean my sanctuaries, you shall fear. Literally, it means. And when it says fear, it means not doing something. When we talk about God fearing, it means not sinning, not violating the negative commandments. That's what it has to do with. That's the essential meaning. It doesn't mean walking around in abject trembling. It means not being emboldened to violate negative commandments. Thou shalt nots. So that's got to do it. In other words, you shall guard my Shabbat and not build the temple on those days. V'chein b'mechilta, and likewise, we've referred to the mechilta before. It is a halachic midrash on the book of Exodus, Parshat B'Shalach, regarding the Parsha of B'Shalach. This is B'Shalach is mostly noted for, it's always read on Shabbat Shira, and the reason for that, of course, is because it contains the great moment of crossing the Red Sea and the sea splitting. But what is sometimes overlooked is what follows, and what follows is the section to do with the manna. And if you study the little part about the manna, you see that it is intimately connected with observing Shabbat. And regarding the manna, it says, Sheshet Yamim Tilkatuhu, you shall gather it for 6 days, Uvayom Hashvi'i Shabbat Lo Yebo. But on the 7th day, it will cease. It is a Shabbat. Lo Yebo, it is not, it won't be in it. So the manna did not fall on Shabbat. Ainly, this is the Mechilta now. This is what he's quoting. So that's the quotation from the Torah. But the Mechilta goes on to say, Ainli Ela Shabbat. From this, I would only figure that the manna didn't fall on Shabbat. Remember, these guys are interested in the pragmatics of it. And so they're going to raise a pragmatic question. Yom Tov Hinayin. But how do you know it didn't fall on Yom Tov? How do we know? Talmud Lomar Shabbat. Okay. And for that reason, it says specifically, not only Uvayom Hashvi'i, it doesn't only say on the 7th day, right? We could have left out this word Shabbat. And we could have said, Uvayom Hashvi'i Lo Yebo. And on the 7th day, it won't be there, right? But the fact that it adds the word Shabbat, that's the Cholel Gam Yom Tov. It includes Yom Tov as well, the Od V'Kama Mekumot. And there are other places where a similar drush is applied to not only exclude Shabbat, but to exclude Yom Tov as well. The Tam Hadavar, and the reason for this matter, why? The Yom Tov, there's a reason that you need to specify Yom Tov as well. The Yom Tov Nichlal B'Shem Shabbat, and the reason why the idea of Yom Tov being included in the terminology of Shabbat, this word Shabbat, Pashuthu, it is pretty straightforward. Mishum Deshem Shabbat, because the noun Shabbat, right, this term Shabbat, Mitzayen Yom Hashvita. What it does is it signifies a day of rest, of cessation of labor. V'hahefsek mimelacha, this is what it means, right? Shvita, ceasing and refraining from labor, umimela, and so automatically, gam Yom Tov bichlal. Yom Tov needs to be included. So that's it. Goes on. Incredible. And in this passage that he's been referring to here, I think it's right. It's Menachot, page 36b, right? That's what he's talking about. And of course, we have Rashi on one side and Tosafot, Rashi's grandchildren. they're not there to explain things. They're there to penetrate the text, just like we're doing right now. Please excuse me. And so just as, that's what Tosafot do. They compare things, they cite things. Very often they disagree with their grandpa. After all, that's a duty of a grandchild, and they do it very well. And by the way, the Rashi is defensible. And in fact, there was one rabbi whose name escapes me right now, who actually wrote a whole work defending Rashi against the Tosafot's attacks. All right. At any rate, they katvu betam ha'ot. They wrote here regarding the meaning, of ot, of sign. What sign are we talking about? So what do we mean by sign? So they say, well, the sign that we're talking about regarding Pesach is because you're forbidden to eat chametz. What about on Sukkot? Hachiyuv b'sukkah, the requirement that you dwell in a sukkah. That's the lulav, and also that you shake the lulav. Aval lefizeh. But think about this. If that's the reason, tzarich iyun, we're going to have to investigate matam b'shavuot. What's the ot on Shavuos? Ushmini atzeret. What about the law of dwelling in the sukkah doesn't apply to Shmini Atzeret, and you don't bench lulav either. So if that's the reason, then technically speaking, right, you'd be putting on you'd be putting on tefillin on Shmini Atzeret and Shavuos. Well, we don't. Okay. V'lo shayach lomar baho hatam mishum korban hayom. Well, maybe you'd like to say, well, the reason it's an ot is because there's a musaf on those days, right? Which isn't the rest of the week. That's the sign that because you bring a musaf, an additional offering that are brought on those days. To imkain, because if you want to argue that way, Rosh Chodesh Nami, that means you would not wear tefillin on Rosh Chodesh either, because you bring musafs on Rosh Chodesh. By the way, I should tell you that while you do wear tefillin on Rosh Chodesh, the custom is to take off your tefillin for Musaf, and now you know why. Okay, you don't wear tefillin when there's Musaf, when you're reciting Musaf on Rosh Chodesh. Imlo shenitzrach leta'amim elu. If it weren't for the fact, in other words, to be able to include Shavuot and Shmini Atzeret as part of the sign, so we have to nitzraf, which means connect. We have to connect the ta'amim elu to the reasons that were given for Pesach and Sukkot. We have to also include Isur Asiyat Malacha, the prohibition of performing malacha, performing labor, and that is the sign. Shezeh dad yesh mefarshim. This, in fact, is the opinion of yesh mefarshim, means there are those who explain in the Tosafot that we just referred to. So as Tosafot, the style of Tosafot is very similar to the style of what we are doing here. Aval has misignon l'shonam, but from the style of their language. This is in the Tosafot. Mevu'ar, it is clear. Deshnei ta'amim meyuchadim heim. Tosafot considers them to be two individual explanations. They're separate explanations. O mishom chametz v'sukkah. Either these holidays are considered an ot because of chametz and sukkah regarding the Pesach and Sukkot, levad, alone, or mishum isur asiyat malacha levad, or from the fact that one is forbidden to perform labor alone. V'tzarich iyun, and this requires further investigation. He is not finished. And I hope you are enjoying this. The Nachmamina, oh, this is so cool. And there's a pragmatic difference Tamim Elu regarding these explanations. In other words, there are different practical outcomes depending on what explanation you give as to what the ot is on these Yom Tov, on Yom Tov. Yesh lomar, one can say, okay, you can say, le'inyan tefillin b'chol hamoed. This is a real conundrum. Okay, it is. Do you put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed? That is to say, the intervening days of the festival. Are you? And let me tell you, there are two distinct traditions. One tradition is, and believe me, a tremendous amount of ink has been spilt on this particular question. Are you supposed to put on tefillin during Chol HaMoed? And you might say, well, what's the problem? Well, he's going to refer to the problem. And there's a problem of Baal Tosef. You don't add to mitzvahs. So if it isn't really a mitzvah, then you shouldn't be putting them on. Okay? So how are you going to deal with this? Well, see, if the reason you don't put on tefillin, remember we said, you don't put on tefillin when there's another sign. But when there's no other sign, then you put on tefillin. So if the sign is that you don't eat chametz on Pesach, and you dwell in the sukkah and bench lulav and etrog on Sukkot, you can figure it out for yourselves. Do you put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed, on the intervening days? Patur. It's exempt. Why? Because you're not eating chametz during Pesach all 7 days, and you're dwelling in the sukkah all 7 days and benching lulav and etrog all 7 days. However, if it's on the basis of not performing labor, remember that was the second sign, quote, quote, uladat. So if you do, the point is, are you allowed to work on Chol HaMoed? Well, there's some labor that is forbidden by the law, by the way. I believe it's called gihutz, which is hard to translate. Believe me, we are really getting into some of the prickly stuff here, which, basically nowadays in modern Hebrew, I believe it refers to ironing, but the word is found in the rabbinic sources, and basically they understand it as laundering clothing on Chol HaMoed, that you're not supposed to do it. But in general, if you've got to go and do your field work and stuff like that, you're allowed to work. It's not a yontif, it's Chol HaMoed. So how does this work out? Uladat haposkim, and according to the poskim are the people who determine, they are the halachic authorities. They're people who know so much of the stuff that they can render decisions regarding halacha. De min haTorah, that according to Torah law, right, mutar ba'asiyat melacha b'chol HaMoed, that you are allowed to perform labor on Chol HaMoed, on the intervening days of the festival. By the way, the not laundering and stuff like that would be rabbinic. That's not Torah law. It is a rabbinic a siag, offense, right? Im kein chayav b'tefillin, and if that is the case, right? If we're talking about that part about working, and by the way, taking everything that's being said here, are you supposed to work on, or you're permitted to work on Chol HaMoed, all right? And in that case, of course, the argument of ot being cessation of labor falls away. And if that's the case, chayav b'tefillin, not only you're permitted to put on tefillin, you are obligated to put on tefillin. For al pi zeh, and regarding those people who hold such an opinion, right? Yesh lomar, you can say, the tam harashba, regarding the explanation of the Rashba, a major, I believe, he's a Rishon, I believe, and he's a major halachic authority. The Sfaraleh, who holds Chol HaMoed patur mitfilin, he argues that during Chol HaMoed you're exempt from tefillin, and he says mishum de azil de shitato, because he follows his position the Tshuvotav, when you read his responsum, it's been published, right? Siman, and he gives you the reference in his responsum 600. Deha'ot hu isur asiyat malacha. He says that since the sign is the prohibition of performing labor, vahu spirale, and he, unlike what we just said, gam kain dechol hamoed asur b'malacha midoraita, he holds, unlike the others, he holds that the prohibition against work during chol hamoed is scriptural. He says it's Torah law. And for that reason, he says tefillin are forbidden. Kamosha Katav HaBeit Yosef, as is cited by another major halachic authority, the Beit Yosef, and he's a commentary found in the Shulchan Aruch, the Orech Chaim Siman Takal, in the Orech Chaim, that part section of the Shulchan Aruch, and it's paragraph 530 and 538. Umimela patur mitfilin b'chol hamoed, and automatically one is therefore exempt from putting tefillin on during chol hamoed, kamo b'yom tov, just as on Yom Tov, v'dok QED. Now it is 7:59. We have not finished. It gets, believe it or not, we are digging deep here. So let me stop the share. And let me give you a little chance. Okay. Lauren, is this driving you nuts? I can't hear you. You're muted.
No, I mean, I'm tired, so I'm not as
Alert?
you're not as alert as usual, but I got it. No,
All
I
right.
got it. So, but the word oat, excuse me, I thought was
Bless you.
Yeah.
a temporal word, but I guess you're using it to mean as a time that is a time to perform some sort of mitzvah.
Well, remember it's all started with the original drash that said that we refer to tefillin as an ot, right? And we refer to the festivals and Shabbat as being an ot. And presumably it is a sign of the divine connection to the Jewish people. That we have a special divine connection, and that these particular practices are an indication of that special divine connection.
Oh yeah, I think I was getting it mixed up with another word.
It could be.
Yeah, sign, got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Golda, your chat comment about you can't work, you can't go without work for the week, then people would never go on vacation.
Well, no. You would leave somebody else to do that for you, but could you make somebody who's not Jewish take over your business? But I was thinking also, because those two for sure are harvest festivals, it's harvest time. You can't just let that stuff go in your field all that time.
Well,
if you have not finished your harvest due to weather, whatever reasons, I mean, you can't just let that stuff sit there.
True.
That would be wrong.
Right.
Or feeding your animals or cooking or any of the other stuff.
Cooking's allowed. Cooking's allowed on Yom Tov.
Oh, because it's Yom Tov. Okay, because it's not a, yeah.
Correct. You could, and by the way, Shavuot, incidentally, of course, doesn't have a Chol HaMoed.
Oh, I know that. No, I was just thinking of those two for sure. You couldn't just and in Israel and places they were talking about this, some things didn't even have the extra days that we have added. Right.
Only Rosh Hashanah.
So Shavuot would be one day.
Correct.
Right. So one day you can do that. It's it's whatever it is. But yeah. But I'm just thinking that you can't do that at that time of year for people who are farming and doing things that are necessary. I mean, this is practical, kind of like that's the way I think about things, is practical.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Sure.
And therefore, remember, on Shemitah, you didn't plow, you didn't harvest, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
For an entire year. and in some cases 2 years. So the answer would be, just like on Shabbat, if it's necessary, if you would be suffering loss because you are not attending to it, you would arrange with a non-Jew to take care of it. And you also would choose not, if it was something for which you were gaining a profit directly from that activity, you would, I believe, not gain profit from it. I mean, this is all part of spiritual discipline and of trying to do things intentionally, not to put the emphasis on the material, and in these particular cases, to put the emphasis on the spiritual.
And also I have something to say.
Okay.
That if you neglect your obligation during the time, like for me as a farmer, if I neglected things during a certain time and then said, oh, well, I have to, not let my trees rest this year because I didn't do this during such a time, so I'm going to have to do that. That doesn't cut it. You have to really be responsible, or with the harvest, you have to be responsible during the time that you have. And you look at things such as the smoke that happened and ruining so many of my vegetables and fruits. And because of the responsibility that it takes to really prepare for things like this, there were things harvested and there were things that were dehydrated and frozen way before that trauma to the lifestyle happened. So you have to really think about these things and prepare so that when the Shabbat comes, you can take the Shabbat with a clear mind and heart, that you did your best. And you're not going to just say, oh, well, I'm going to leave it to somebody else because I neglected certain things during the time without paying attention to all the circumstances. And, the infinite source of all knows that all of this is going to happen and is happening. So to be able to tune into that and to stay with that infinite information that you have access to.
So, Lisa, what are you arguing then for? Are you saying that—
She's arguing me.
Yeah.
She's arguing with me, and that's fine. I get it.
I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
The other little piece.
Thank you, Gold.
That I think
That's not a problem. I get it. No, I get it.
that's okay. The other piece also is when everybody's doing it, right? When everyone's doing it, and it's part of the whole culture of the place, it makes it so much easier to handle when you're just by yourself, isolated, and you're countercultural. So no, and Lisa and Golda, thank you so much. What I really was asking, and then I'm going to have to quit quickly, is going into this kind of, peeling apart, to this degree, is it something you enjoy doing? Otherwise, I will avoid doing it. I happen to think it's really cool because this kind of deconstruction.
I think we may have pulled enough off this onion.
Okay.
Maybe. Because there's other stuff we can look at too. So, I mean, I think we've got the gist of the idea that they're arguing over whether or not Tefillin and work, etc., are done. But we know what we do now because our rabbis have decided what we do. Do you wear Tefillin during Chol HaMoed?
They needed to
Rabbi.
It's a pure
Rabbi, do you wear Tefillin during Chol HaMoed?
You know that I've had to run back and forth on this.
Yeah.
I've tried to learn about it. So the general rule is, and this is what he gets into, by the way, is you say it with a bracha, you put on tefillin, but you don't say a bracha, etc. And that's what he deals with in the next little section. The rule of thumb was that if you do work, if you in fact go to the office on Chol HaMoed and you pursue your regular duties on Chol HaMoed, then you put on tefillin.
There you go.
But if you don't,
it's a personal choice.
Yeah.
It ends up being a personal choice.
But I will tell you that Rabbi Scoff's practice. He was the rabbi who, for those of you who don't know, was the rabbi who preceded me at Brit Shalom Knesset Israel in St. Louis. His practice was not to put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed. It is an open question. It is an open question. I'm going to stop the recording and hope